Good morning, everyone, and welcome to my review of episode 1 of Moon Knight from Disney Plus. Brand new show. Is it a redemption of the Disney Plus milieu for Marvel Comics? I suppose we'll see. If you're just tuning in for the brief summary review, I liked the episode okay. There wasn't anything glaringly terrible about it. But, I kind of come in with a sort of a wariness given the history of Disney Plus shows so far, where the first episode, man, it can really fake you out. So we won't know until things proceed, but I'll go over what I thought of the first episode in general. I thought the acting was good. The action was fun and funny in places, and there was plenty of teasing of mysteries to be solved. All in all, a good introduction, I suppose, without giving away too much, without hitting you over the head with too much. I'll go into details for spoilers in a moment. For those of you that want to avoid spoilers, obviously don't listen any further than this, but that's my general first impression. I have some other things to say, of course. We'll get into that. But before I get there, who's joining me this morning? Jaeger Pony, Funtime Bats, Spyro Girl, Bridget, Kiefer Dam, Brittany Holland. Good morning to you all. Hope you're all doing well. And thank you, Kiefer Dam, pinning up to the top of the chat box the GoFundMe links to our friend Shady Grin, Angry Illinoisian, and his kitten, friends of the show, who they and their families and friends could use your help. If you have a moment and a couple of bucks, please take a look if you could. So, let's get right into it, shall we? We start off with a mysterious individual preparing some kind of ritual on a table. Now, when I first saw this shot, I couldn't help but think back to the opening montage of A Nightmare on Elm Street, where you get that little close-up of Freddy Krueger going over his desk with his table, his table with all his tools and everything. For some reason, that's where my mind went. But something else happened, and this is just a general statement. And I could be wrong. Maybe this isn't the origin of it, but I think Guardians of the Galaxy has ruined comic book themes. And what I mean by themes is theme songs. Because we open up this show, as we do with so many shows these days, with a pop song. It's a Bob Dylan song called Every Grain of Sand. Har har, sand, Egypt, Moon Knight, etc. What happened to theme songs for characters? Right. Well, the first time you encounter a character or get a hint of a character, why don't we start with an original theme, a score for the character? As I watched this, I couldn't help but think of Peter and the Wolf. Remember Peter and the Wolf, where each character had their own instrument? It was the same tune effectively, but it had its own instrument to denote the character so that you knew who you were being shown before they even showed up on the stage. But here we get a Bob Dylan song, so whatever. Anyway, we see this mysterious individual who has several interesting objects on his table here. He has a double-headed alligator or crocodile walking stick. He has these little slippers. He's got these little, bands of metal, bronze or something. And he has this very distinctive, very likely CGI tattoo on his wrist of the scales of justice, or the scales of judgment, I suppose. Anyway, so we watch him as he prepares this ritual. He takes a glass of water and he does a little, rubbing his finger around it for a second to get some sound. He turns the glass over. He wraps it up in the cloth, and then he smashes it with his cane. Let's see if I can get that there. Yeah. And then he takes the broken shards of glass and he puts them into his slippers, spreading them out evenly, and then stepping into his slippers, and then hobbling out of his little temple or whatever. A temple I'm sure we will see later on in the series, as in one of the teaser trailers we saw our hero escaping, I believe, from this same location. So he's some kind of ritualistic, cultish man, obviously, and he's also walks in pain. I guess. And so we have our Bob Dylan song. And then we cut to the Marvel logo and we get into another pop song. I forget what it was, but it was another pop song. Not a theme for the character, for the show. And I know, scoring and creating original music for characters is tough. And I see this in some of the other videos that review shows like this, where they'll note that, oh, in this moment you can hear the theme that is for this character. And I am challenged, except in some very rare instances, to think of what are the themes of the Marvel characters. Just thinking about the Marvel characters, right? I mean, Superman, if you think about Superman, it's right? And if it's Batman, it's you think of these very iconic themes. And the only theme I could think of for Marvel characters is the Avengers theme. Ba, 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 ba. Every other character, like maybe Iron Man, but I always associate like AC/DC to him, so I guess maybe pop songs are stuck there. But there are themes to a couple of them, but they just don't occur. Are we stuck with just pop songs now for characters? Anyway, so we focus in on our hero, Stephen Grant, who is waking up for the first time, and we see that he has chained himself to his bed, or strapped himself to his bed. I'm not exactly sure how secure the simple belt strap is. They show at one point that he has a bike lock on the other end of the strap, but there's no lock on the ankle. So what's the point? And when I saw this, by the way, I'm going to be referencing back to a whole bunch of other movies and things that this reminded me of as we go. So just a note. This reminded me of the movie Wolf with Jack Nicholson, where he chains himself to a radiator at one point to prevent himself from escaping the apartment and going off on a werewolf rampage. If you haven't seen Wolf, I recommend it. It's pretty good. Anyway, so Stephen Grant wakes up and he's bike locked to his bed. He's got sand poured all over the surroundings of his bed to pick up if there are any footsteps, which there are not. We don't see any footsteps here, except for maybe that there, which is kind of a, maybe a indicator of things to come, so to speak. And then he goes over to his door, where he has a long strip of masking tape over the seam, purportedly to show him that the door has not been opened. Even though if you want to masking tape is about as weak Post-it note type adhesive as you could have, so I don't know why he would use that, not something like actual packing tape or something with a little bit of heft to it, but maybe duct tape. Duct tape's always good. So anyway, so we see that he has some awareness that he does things that he's not aware of and goes places that he doesn't remember going to. He has some concern for his sleeping life, let's say. All right. And I'm going to point these things out because as we go through the show, there are some kind of logical inconsistencies I see. Anyway, so he calls his mother, presumably, on his smartphone, and he's feeding his fish. His fish named Gus, who apparently only has one tail, one fin at the back of his tail, which is important sort of for later, kind of. Anyway, so we follow Stephen as he goes out into the world. We find out he is in London, of all places, if the iconic bus was not indicator enough. And he's apparently a very sleepy guy. He doesn't get enough rest for, reasons we will find out later. So he's always falling asleep and he's tired. And he ends up here in this museum. I kind of skipped over that part. It's hard to find the exact frames on this deal. So he's heading off to the London Museum, where there is currently a big ancient Egypt thing going on, exhibit. Now, I don't know how the London Museum works. I don't know if they have a perpetual Egyptian exhibit or something, but yeah. Anyway, he goes up to this little girl who's, I guess, there on a school trip, and he starts looking at this model of the pyramid at Giza with her. And there's some indication that he is very, or at least somewhat knowledgeable of Egyptian history and Egyptian culture. And this little girl just they kind of go back and forth on the pyramid for a second. And then they have this, and again, little conversation about, he tells her how they used to remove the organs from the bodies before mummification. And so this is just a setup that he has some working knowledge of Egyptian history and culture and such and that. What was I going to say? I was going to say something else. Oh, I should mention, I have a very cursory understanding of the character of Moon Knight. Okay, I've read deep in the past a couple of series that were done. The one that I remember in particular is his. All I know about him is that he is an avatar of the Egyptian god Khonshu, who I forget exactly what the Khonshu is a god of, and he's kind of an unwilling agent of this god. He has, depending on the telling, either multiple identities that he just moves through as a mercenary, and as several other things. There is Stephen Grant, there's Mark Spector, there's another one that I'm forgetting, I think Richard something. Later on, I think they turn this into a sort of mental condition, sort of a multiple personality disorder kind of thing. And so Moon Knight, his strength ebbs and flows with the changing of the moon. A full moon, he's really powerful, a waning moon, he's less powerful or something. That's my understanding of Moon Knight. I've read some comic books. I have a rough understanding. So I'm kind of like I think the perfect audience for this. I don't have any expectations, right? I'm not so hardcore that I'm going to like point out some big problem. But anyway, so we find out that Stephen Grant here has some knowledge of Egyptology, let's say, and he works at this museum. Where does he work at the museum? In the gift shop. He works in the gift shop of the museum. Did you see his apartment, his gigantic loft apartment? I don't know what a gift shop, cash register operator earns in the museum in London, but I don't know. That's always seems the size of people's apartments in shows as compared to the jobs they purportedly hold is always something that I find a little out there. Anyway, we find out that he and his direct supervisor here, Donna, don't get along. She's kind of a jerk, and he, of course, is very meek and very nervous, and so he's doing his thing, and all of a sudden, this very attractive lady comes up that he knows at work, and she's like, "Are we on for our date on Friday?" And he's like, "Date? What date?" And she's like, "Oh, don't play coy." And so I'm thinking, okay, so his other personalities or whatever are obviously operating independently of him, and he has no idea about this. He has no idea about this except that he chains himself to his bed every night, and he has some notion that he's doing things he can't remember. But okay. And the other thing that occurs to me is we'll find out that his other personality, at least the one that we're aware of, knows that this personality exists. And so if the other personality is making dates with women that he's pretty sure the personality that will actually be the recipient of the date won't remember, and that somehow it'll get screwed up, then that other personality is pretty sadistic. It's also interesting, and maybe there's a third personality, I think there is. She doesn't notice that his accent isn't an American accent now, because his other personality speaks in an American accent. And we are this point is highlighted to us later. I'll get into it. It's kind of confusing. So anyway, he's surprised to find out he has a date with this coworker that he's attracted to. So he's going to go off to a steakhouse to have a date with her. And then his supervisor shows up and it was like, "Wow, you've got some nerve. And by the way, what's a vegan doing making a date at a steakhouse?" Okay. And he's like, "Yeah, okay." And he's kind of odded out by this, of course. And then we have a back room scene where they're stocking the shelves or getting inventory ready for the gift shop. And he starts pointing out that the historical and cultural accuracy of some of their marketing is incorrect. There should be 9 gods here, not 7, and this one's missing and that one's missing. So again, underscoring to us that Stephen Grant is something of a Egyptomaniac, if that's even a word. I don't know if it's a word. Either way. Let's see. So what else was happening here? It's very procedural. I don't have a whole lot of critique because so far it's very, it's interesting. It keeps your attention. Like I say, some of it wasn't that mysterious to me because I had some idea of the character and his issues. And of course, a lot is implied in the trailer. Anyway, so he's walking out the door and the security guard calls him Scotty. And he says, no, it's Steven with a V. And so either this is to indicate that the security guard knows him as a different person, or just, again, he's a very forgettable person, right? He's a very, on the fringes. Nobody pays attention to him. He's not important, even though he's Oscar Isaac, but whatever. Anyway, so then we cut to him having some dinner, and he's talking to someone. And who is he talking to? Well, he's talking to a human statue sitting in the middle of some park in London. Now, I don't know if this is significant in the comic books in some way. I don't know if this is representative of a character. I was trying to piece out some symbology here. Go back to Boondock Saints for a second. With him talking to an inanimate object that is also a person. So sort of like him later on sort of conversing with what are otherwise statues of gods or something. Anyway, the human statue, of course, does not talk back. And he kind of pours his heart out about his oncoming date and does she like him? And, oh boy, maybe a girlfriend is something that I could actually have. And the statue guy says nothing. And he's a very good statue guy. We get back to the apartment, and he prepares himself for his sleep. He gets his sand all sifted and ready to go. He fills up the footprint that he left when he got up in the morning. And if you noted, I circled around another kind of footprint that was there before he got up that same morning. So, hint, hint. He puts up his really weak masking tape, and he locks all his doors from the inside, which, of course, is going to prevent him from leaving somehow. And then he, again, belts his ankle, but not locks it or anything. And then we focus in on the bike lock again, as though that means anything. And then he's lying awake with a Rubik's Cube with a app playing about staying awake. So he wants to stay awake. He knows that he is sleepwalking or doing stuff or showing up in places where he doesn't remember going, but he wants to stay awake. So anyway, so he stays awake. Then we cut to, I guess, earlier in the evening. It's a little confusing to go from him being in bed to suddenly he's now reading books, but we watch him in a montage of him studying Egyptology and different symbols and different gods and different, the Ennead, the rift between God and man. And he's reading his books, and he's throwing up his Rubik's Cube, and then all of a sudden, poof, his jaw's dislocated, and he's lying in a field. Okay. There's just a snap cut. We're suddenly there. And he wakes up, and he evens out his jaw, and he's like, where the heck am I? And suddenly he's in, I don't know, the Bavarian Alps or something? They never really say. And I'm a little challenged to figure it out since I'm not much of a cultural anthropologist here. But some of the language printed on things later on makes me think we're in, I don't know, Germany, Austria, Belgium. I don't know. Anyway, so he's like, where the heck am I? And then a voice from nowhere comes around and says, go back to sleep, worm. This, surprise, surprise, is the voice of Khonshu. I only know that because I'm a comic book freak. And the voice of Khonshu is provided by F. Murray Abraham, who you may remember from such classic films as Mimic and surviving the game. Anyway, so the voice of Khonshu is telling him, go to sleep, worm. And he's like, where are you? And he says, surrender the body to Mark. Okay, so the body and Mark. Ooh. Thank you, tall person. Hoy, can't watch live. We'll watch in full later. Happy Pencil Day. All right. Well, get the lead out. I guess. I don't know. What do you say on Pencil Day? I don't know. There's no actual lead in pencils, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, thank you, tall person. Surrender the body to Mark. All right. So this indicates that Stephen has some sort of either conscious or subconscious control over giving over control of the body to the other personality, except that he doesn't. And we'll see that he doesn't as things proceed. So anyway, he starts searching himself and he finds in his pocket this golden scarab. Where did this come from? What is this? And he looks up behind him and he's in front of a castle. And there's some guys up in the castle and they point guns at him and start shooting at him. And he goes running. Ah! And he goes running through he suddenly makes his way all the way down the hill to the Bavarian town or whatever. He's running through the streets, and everybody is like gathering. Everybody in the town is walking very procedurally forward in a big group. And they're all getting to the town square. And something like this back here, I don't know what this says, like Suswagen or something. And so yeah, it's some kind of, I keep thinking Bavaria. Something like that. I don't know. Anyway, so the crowd gathers in the middle of the town square. And through the crowd comes this figure. This, of course, is our introductory doing ritual guy. And this is Ethan Hawke. He is playing a character named Harrow. I forget his first name off the top of my head. I think it's Jason Harrow or something like that. As I understand it, Harrow is not a major character from the Moon Knight mythos and has actually been transmogrified into something much more complicated in this show than was in the comic books, which I guess helps in the sense that you don't know what to expect. That's at least my understanding. Anyway, so he's shuffling forward to the middle of the town square. And, of course, our hero is hiding in the crowd because he's got nowhere to go. And so he's like, and so the hero starts making this speech. We are here to make the earth as much like heaven as possible. And who will step forward? You're a brave man offering your soul for judgment. Okay. So this entire town, or at least the majority that we're seeing here, are all part of this cult, I guess. All right. So this is wanting to serve our goddess even before she wakes. Okay. So implicitly, our villain is meaning to wake the goddess Amunet. And so I judge you in Amunet's name with but a fraction of her power. And so he holds the guy's hands, and as he holds the hands, you can't really see it here because I can't play the video, but his tattoo starts to shift and wobble. And as it does so, it turns the color green. I don't know if I can find it. There we go. It turns green, like a green light. And so he deems this guy, this is the face of a good man. And so he hugs him and everything's fine. Like, oh boy. And then the guys with the guns are looking for Stephen, of course. And then who would like to go next? And then this little old lady comes up, says, please, Harrow, I must know. Will you accept your scales regardless of the outcome? Now, here's the thing. You don't really have a choice. We'll find that out later. It doesn't really matter regardless of the outcome. Anyway, so she puts his hands in her hands in his, and his tattoo wobbles, and it becomes red. Dun, dun, dun. And he's like, oh, she's like, I've been good my entire life. And he says something to the effect of, but the scales see everything. Perhaps it's something that lies ahead. So maybe she'll do something bad in the future. And then he says, well, I wish you could live to see the world we make. And then her skin starts to darken a little bit, and she just dies. It's like he sucked the life out of her or whatever. And then he gets a little note from his guard here that someone came and he infiltrated the place. Is he still here? And then we think so, yes. And so he says something in Egyptian, I'm assuming, and everybody immediately bows as they are conditioned to, except for, of course, Stephen, who stands up a beat too long. And he's like, I don't know what's going on. I just want to go back home. Will you return the scarab? He's like, what? Oh, right, this thing. And he tries to hand it to him, but he can't. He can't open his hand. He is compelled not to open his hand or give it away. And every time he tries, his body rejects it. So again, trying to figure out the physics of this entire thing, Stephen Grant is the cowardly, innocent, British accented personality who apparently has some sort of say over who controls his body. And yet, unbeknownst to him and against his own will, he cannot control his body at this point. So anyway, yeah, he tries to give it away, but his body keeps fighting it back. And so he's trying to get away from these guys as they're fighting him to get the scarab. And all of a sudden, his eyes flutter, and we cut to him standing over everybody with his hands all bloody, and everybody is just down and either, I'm assuming, dead or at least beaten within an inch of their life. And this is interesting because there was a story that came out this morning that showed that Disney Plus had been editing out certain violent images from its previous Marvel TV shows, specifically Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And yet here we have a decent amount of blood and indication of violence. So anyway, so yeah, he blacked out and all of a sudden woke up, and he had taken down and beat halfway to death 4 or 5 different people. And here in the background, a lady's hiding her child from this scene, right? Yeah, hiding her child from the scene where she's part of a giant town that's a cult of an Egyptian goddess, and they just watched an old lady die. Anyway, so he's got the scarab still in his hand, all bloody, and he runs away from everybody, and he hijacks a cupcake truck. And then we have a relatively entertaining car chase where he's driving, even though he says he doesn't even have his license, but somehow he knows how to drive a car. Maybe it's just muscle memory or instinct or something. And so he's speeding down the road, and they're shooting at him and chasing him. And at various points, he blacks out, and something else takes over, and then we cut back, and he's done something crazy. Yeah, he tries to pass an old lady in a car, and she flips him off, which was kind of funny. So then this bad guy hijacks into the car, and before we know it, he's fighting him, and then all of a sudden he blacks out, and he's got a gun in his hand, and the guy in the back of the truck is dead, shot to death. So Stephen just killed somebody, or, his other personality did. And we do this several times over the course of the car chase, which is funny in a way, because you wonder, how did he get from point A to point B? It's kind of interesting. And the voice keeps talking to him as well. F. Murray Abraham, Conchu. And eventually he gets to the end of the road, and he's about to be shot by these guys, and then, he wakes up back in his apartment. And he doesn't have any injuries on him, and there's no bruises. He doesn't have any blood on him. He's still strapped to his bed. The sand is undisturbed. He thinks, it was all a dream. It was all a dream. And then he goes back to his situation. He looks over at his fish, and he notices his fish has 2 tails instead of the 1 tail the fish had the day before. And he goes to the pet shop, and he says, "Can tails grow back?" And she's like, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Yesterday the fish had 1 fin. It was like that when I bought him." And she says, "Well, if you want to swap it, go ahead. I don't care what that Nemo movie says." And then she says something to the effect of, "Like I told you yesterday." And he's like, "What do you mean yesterday?" So his other personality came in to replace the fish, which I'm assuming died, and he didn't want to upset Stephen, so he bought a new fish to replace the fish. And yet the date thing. Speaking of which, he notices the clock and goes, is that clock right? I'm late for my date. And so he gets himself all dressed up and he runs out to the restaurant and he's sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting. And finally he decides to call the cute girl from work, and she's like, yeah, I spent all night waiting for you on Friday. And he's like, well, I'm here. Yeah, but it's Sunday. He's like, it's Sunday? What? I don't know about you. I don't own a smartphone myself, but I see that most people that do, the first thing they see on their screen is the time and the date whenever they start unlocking their cell phone. But somehow he just didn't realize it was Sunday. The 2 days had passed, more so than he thought. And so now he has an indication that he's lost time, which, again, if he's been chaining himself to his bed and putting sand around his bed and taping up his door, this kind of thing should not be all that shocking to him, unless, of course, he's never lost days before, I guess. I don't know. Like I said, there's some little logical going on in the course of this story. But anyway, so he decides to order a steak, even though he's a vegan, because he's so depressed now, and he lost the chance of having a date and a girlfriend and everything. Thank you. This is Kyle, The Wacky Adventures of Lunar Crusader. Hello, chat people and scribbles. Hello, this is Kyle. Yes, Lunar Crusader. You know, I have a cultural tie to anything moon related, so it was important I watched this. So he's calling his mom again, I guess. I'm wondering who mom really is, because he keeps leaving messages for mom. He gets to his apartment. He goes upstairs. He's looking around. He's eating the chocolates that were meant for the girl, and he's all sad. He's got chocolate on his face, and he's sad, and he's eating his chocolate and looking at his not Gus fish. And then he drops his chocolates, and he notices all these scratches on the floor where the table's been moved. And he's like, what? And he moves the carpet, and there's all these scratches all the way across the floor. So he moves the table to match where the scratches are, stands up on the table and notices this loose wood panel. And inside the little wood panel alcove, he finds a key with a lock pad on it and a phone, a cell phone, a flip phone, if you will. And he looks on this flip phone, and there's all these missed calls from Layla. And as he scrolls through, I notice at one point the name Duchamp shows up. I can't find that frame specifically. I remember that name is somehow related to the character of Moonlight, and I think Layla is too. Like, I think one or both of them basically act as his Alfred Pennyworth in the course of his adventures. But anyway, so Layla's left all these messages or all these missed calls. And as he's holding the phone, it suddenly rings with a new call from Layla. A very distinctive ring. A ring that never happened in the several times she called previous from the phone that was just sitting up in the alcove. I mean, I guess maybe the phone was turned off all that time. But anyway, so he picks it up and is like, hello? And she's like, oh my God, you're alive. And he's like, yeah, all right. And she's like, that's it? I've been texting and calling you for months. All right, so months have gone by without her being contacted by our character, even though our character has purportedly been slipping into this other personality often enough that our primary personality here has been chaining himself to his bed. Okay, I don't know the backstory yet. Where have you been? Who are you? What's going on? He's like, who do you think I am? And she's like, what's with this accent? He's like, huh? What is happening right now? Sorry, who do you think I am? And she's like, what's going on, Mark? And he's like, why did you call me Mark? And the line disconnects. And then all of a sudden, Khonshu shows up again. He's like, Steven, you need to stop. You're gonna get yourself in trouble. He's like, what? Who? Sorry, no, that wasn't Conchu. The voice, sorry, I got confused because I don't have the audio playing. The voice he was hearing there was the American accent version of Oscar Isaac. So it was his other personality talking to him now. And he looks in the mirror, and the mirror starts operating independently of him, like shaking its head and moving. Very old trick. Like here, he's looking this way, but the mirror is still looking at him. Yeah. So anyway, he starts hearing voices. He starts losing his mind a little bit. He runs out in the hallway. He gets into an elevator, which of course has mirrors on both sides of the door for the infinity mirror effect. They do this a lot. I think they overdo it. It's like, we get it. Yeah, we get it. The mirrors, the different reflections. Yeah, we know. And so he starts looking down the hallway as the elevator opens. And let's see, or as the elevator closes, and the elevator opens up, and then you hear this rumbling sound. And then there's this thing standing in the hallway, this big long-beaked skull thing with a moon scepter looking at him from the other side of the hallway, and it starts advancing. Now, I know that this is Khonshu. This is the god of which Moon Knight is the agent of, the avatar of, whatever you want to call it. And as the monster gets closer, it suddenly turns into this innocent old lady who sees this guy crouching in the corner of the elevator, freaking out. And she's like, yeah. It's like, hi, are you okay? Yeah, yeah, I'm just going to leave here and get out real quick. And he looks really crazy and insane. And then all of a sudden, there's Khonshu again. Oh, no, it's Khonshu! And then he wakes up as Khonshu is approaching him, and suddenly he's on the bus. He's like, ah! And I kind of thought of In the Mouth of Madness. If you ever saw In the Mouth of Madness, where our hero, John Trent, wakes up on like a Greyhound bus, all of a sudden starts screaming. I don't know. I don't imagine any of the things I'm referencing are homages or anything, but that's just where my mind goes. Anyway, he's on a bus to go to work at the gift shop. And as he's getting off the bus, he sees, if I can find it here, because it's only like a frame or two. Well, anyway, I can't find it here, but on the bus was Harrow. There he is, slightly. Ethan Hawke was on the bus with him. And so now he knows, oh my God, he's real. So he knows he didn't have a dream the other day. And he goes into work, and the security guard is like, hey, what's up? And Steven's like, hey, can you make sure nobody comes in here? And the guy's like, dude, it's a museum. He's like, yeah, but I mean, anybody dodgy. He's like, it's a free museum. Anybody can just kind of walk in. You're like, yeah, okay. And then his boss starts bugging him. And then he freaks out a little bit, says, Donna, shush. And then he says this very weird thing. Oh my God, that man was on the bus. And I'm assuming he's talking about this guy. But in the course of the previous scene, nothing that occurred made me focus in on anybody who looked like this. So I was really, really confused. I kept looking around for, is he talking about Ethan Hawke? Where's Ethan Hawke? But he's talking about this guy, I guess. So I don't know. For some reason, I have to go back. Like, was this guy on the bus? Let's go back real quick. Was this guy on the bus? No? Okay. I'm doing this myself now because earlier I couldn't. Okay. Where is a large balding man that I'm supposed to have made note of? Right? I don't. Maybe I'm missing it. I don't know. But anyway, he makes some significance out of this guy who's wandering away from him. And so he starts following this guy as he went around the corner or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, I'm confused. Anyway, the guy goes around the corner. You can kind of see his foot there. And then all of a sudden, as he's coming around the corner, there's... where is he? Oh, there he is. Our bad guy shows up. And he's standing in between these two pillars, one of which has Ominate on it. And he says, I assume Stephen Grant was an alias. Imagine my surprise to find you here. Yeah, because in the course of confronting him in the village square, he said his name was Stephen Grant. And so I guess that's how they found him or tracked him down, whatever. Anyway, he turns to a security guard. He says, "Excuse me, Ronnie, this man right here has been following me." And then Ronnie, I don't know if I can find it again here. He comes up and he takes up his sleeve and he's got one of the tattoos, Praise Amit, or Aminit, or whatever. Like, oh, okay, so the cult members are infiltrated into the museum now, and apparently have been for some time. Okay, that's interesting to know. So then Stephen and Harrow have this conversation. He's like, "Mate, I don't have your bloody beetle, I swear." And he's like, "It's not my beetle, it's hers. It doesn't belong to me, it belongs to her. Do you know Amit or Aminit?" And he starts telling the story of Aminit, that she was the judge, and she could see the past and the future of your deeds, good and bad, and judge you for them. She punished sinners for crimes, or she looked for sinners to commit their crime before punishing them. She could see what they were going to be. Now, there's something interesting. He says, "Would you wait to weed a garden till after the roses were dead?" He says, "No, I wouldn't do that. The justice of Amit surveys the whole of our lives, past, present, future." Now, where is that one part? Can I find that? Had Amit been free, she would have, and if I can just get it, come on, work with me here, Disney Plus. She would have prevented Hitler and the destruction he wrought, Nero, the Armenian genocide, and Pol Pot. And I found it interesting that they mentioned the Armenian genocide, because you don't hear that very often in media. It's usually kind of a taboo thing to bring up. But it's mentioned here, which is interesting. What's also interesting, fun fact, Oscar Isaac starred in a movie about the history of the Armenian genocide called The Promise several years ago. So when I saw that in relation to Oscar Isaac being here, I thought, that's interesting. Anyway, so our villain is explaining basically that what he's doing is a total good. He is preventing bad things from happening. That his goddess can tell if someone is going to do something terrible in the future, so you might as well head it off at the pass. That's his deal. He's also talking about, were she free? So he is attempting, or I assume that his goal is to resurrect or bring back to the world his goddess. So anyway, he blames her inability to do these things, stop Hitler and so on, because her fellow gods did something to her or restrained her or something. And he says something about not even her avatars could do anything about it. And he's like, avatars, blue people, love that film. Really? Oh, you mean the anime? So yeah, jokes. And then suddenly the lights start flickering in the place. And he keeps being all threatening. Now, Ethan Hawke, I love Ethan Hawke. He's one of those guys who's just like always a good actor, even when he's doing complete schlock. So I always enjoy him. And he says, I want to help you. You know, I understand that you have a lot of problems, and I see how you've had so many obstacles in your life. And I just want to help you. And so he takes his hands and he's got his tattoo out. Do you want to know the truth? And his tattoo starts quivering back and forth, but it doesn't change color. It doesn't do anything. It just goes nuts. And he's got this look on his face like, WTF? And he says something like, there's a lot of chaos in you. And then a tour group suddenly opens up from the back and distracts him, and he runs away. And Harrow says to his security guard underling, no, let him go. And what happens next? Well, Stephen just goes about his job for the day, working at the gift shop counter. Because, you know, when I discover that there are murderous Egyptian cultists interspersed amongst my coworkers who have it out for me, who have already tried to kill me a couple of times already, I just go back to my job. You know, it's, whatever. I'll just, business as usual. I guess. Anyway, so he does his job stuff and he's alone in the museum, and all of a sudden it goes all dark. And then we get a sort of, I couldn't help but think back to the movie The Relic from the 90s, if you ever saw The Relic, which had a similar setup. Someone is locked in a museum with a whole bunch of artifacts, and all of a sudden a monster shows up because he starts hearing a dog whining or something. And and of course he walks by the reflection of the box, and of course the reflection is still there even though he's passed by. I don't know how many different times we have to do this joke, this gag to tell us, yes, we know he has multiple personalities, whatever. And so he's looking around for this stray dog or whatever, and all of a sudden he hears the voice of Harrow, I guess, over the intercom, I'm guessing. And a demon dog thing is chasing him. This jackal, this hyena, this, I don't know, Osiris monster thing. Anyway, so it starts chasing him through the museum, and he runs away from it into a bathroom. And then all of a sudden, the American accent version of him starts talking to him and is like, I need your body, but I can't have you fighting me this time. And he's like, what? He says, Steven, I can save us. You have to give me the body. You have to relinquish control. Do you understand? And so finally, Steven apparently gets it or understands what he has to do or something. And the monster busts through the door just as he's going through his transformation. All these hieroglyphics start appearing on the walls for some reason. And then there's this scuffle and this fight and this shout. And then the monster thing was thrown out the door and then dragged back in. I can't really make it show that. And then we cut to this cloaked figure beating the ever-loving crap out of the monster. And then he walks towards the camera and we cut to black. And that's it. So overall, as an introductory episode, it was fine. I like I say, I kept operating on tenterhooks, waiting for it to like completely bomb out on me or do something ridiculously dumb. It didn't. It brought up a lot of questions, right? And a lot of inconsistencies, which I am willing to allow the story to explain to me, or at least give me some kind of justification. And of course, my nitpicking mind couldn't help but look through these things as we went and try to figure out, like, why is this the way it is, or how is this, or how long has this been going on, and so on. So, the action was fine. The acting was fine. They didn't give away too much right away. They didn't beat you over the head with any. I guess the thing that I noticed the most, because I've unfortunately had to see this in the past Marvel shows, there was no, at least in this episode, ideological agenda. I wasn't beaten over the head with, sexual politics or identity politics or anything, really. So I appreciated that, at least. It was unfortunate that I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop on that point, but this is what Disney Plus has done to me regarding Marvel. Most of my complaints are just, I guess, minor quibbles with style choices and things, and some of the plot progression. But this it's not a story we haven't seen before in a way. Someone discovering that they have a secret life they didn't know that they had, or their memories had been blocked or whatever. You think of The Long Kiss Goodnight, or not nearly as good, but Salt with what's her name? I suddenly forget. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so that story of the hidden life, even from your own mind, we've seen it before. And I guess there really wasn't another way to tell it, since obviously the Moon Knight thing is older than a lot of those stories. But anyway, so I'm optimistic, as I have been with just about every Marvel project so far, until they run it into the dirt. But we'll find out, I suppose, as the episodes proceed. I believe that this series is a 6-parter. It's either a 4-parter or a 6-parter, something like that, something relatively small, which I'm hoping Disney is learning, because one of the failings of the Netflix series, save for the excellent writing of Daredevil Season 1, is that they always had to have 13 episodes, even if they only had like 5 episodes worth of plot. Or the biggest failing of the Netflix series for the most part was they didn't present it in an episodic storytelling framework. They tried to take one storyline and stretch it over 13 episodes rather than having like an adventure per episode, more or less. Now, obviously, they're doing that here as well. This does not look like it's going to be an episodic show, obviously. But if you keep it to just a handful of episodes, it might work. So we'll see. I'm curious to see, given the atmosphere of today, how they handle the concept of mental illness or the implication thereof in a Disney Plus Marvel show. I'm curious to see how much they rely on CGI for everything, because a lot of this, this episode was done with obviously green screens and things, but there wasn't anything except right at the end that was ridiculously outside the realm of the real world. So things felt kind of practical, and a lot of the drama was created with just like camera cuts and contrasts of environment and things like that to enhance the tension and the mystery. So yeah, there you go. I'll take a couple minutes here to see if you guys have anything you'd like to say, and then I will wrap up. Random Americans. So will we have to wait till episode 2 to see Scribe's Hope crushed? Probably. The first dose always feels great, and then everything else comes afterwards. And again, I'm not some huge Moon Knight fanatic that I saw anything in this that completely crushed my soul as a Moon Knight fan. So we'll see. Colleen, senior staff reporter and chief Florida correspondent Colleen Bernier says 6 episodes. All right. Thank you, Colleen. Bridget, How to Train Your Dragon is a masterclass of musical score and character themes. Again, this is something that I really wish they would do more of, and I can't necessarily recall back to every Marvel Disney Plus show so far, but just this tendency to overlay characters with theme songs, pop songs, and not actual orchestral themes. Unless somehow you make that pop song part of the character, like in Fallen with Denzel Washington, where the villain sings that song, "Time is on my side." That's part of his thing to be creepy. I don't know how effective it is, but at least that was part of the character. In these things, you just put a pop song over whose title or lyrics are germane to the scene, but not necessarily to the character. So, yeah. Anyway, I wish they'd stop doing that. John Miller says, "Stay tuned for more Sybil the superhero." Well, yeah, that's the thing. How are they going to? Are they going to explain it as a mental illness? What is going? If they give an explanation at all, are they going to explain it as a mental illness? Are they going to give something else? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. And I think, one more here from. Excuse me. As I'm just catching up, says Random American. If someone was worried about doing something while asleep, wouldn't they set up a camera to see exactly what was going on? You'd think. I mean, especially if you can afford an apartment that large in London on a gift shop cashier's salary. Yeah, setting up a camera seems like a smart thing to do. Not exactly a difficult thing to acquire these days. But yeah, his security measures made no sense. You can jump over the sand. The masking tape is, again, Post-it note strength. And the locks are all on the inside. So unless he was suspecting that someone was kidnapping him, I guess that could be the other explanation, that he thinks someone is kidnapping him. And so he set everything up to prevent someone from getting into his apartment rather than him getting out. But anyway, That's all I got. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me. We'll come back next week around this same time. Can't give you an exact time because real life stuff, but so long as nothing crazy happens, Wednesday mornings for the next 6 weeks, Moon Knight reviews as we go. Appreciate you all showing up. Hope you are all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I will see you on the next one. Specifically, tomorrow night, Thursday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence. See you there.